Welcome to Squared Circle Film Breakdown. This Saturday in Dubai, Deji takes on Floyd Mayweather in a fight nobody would have expected. Coming off his long-awaited first victory over FouseyTube in August, he looks now to showcase his skills against the best, pledging to land a punch on the legend. Can Deji shock the world? Today we'll take an in-depth look at the fighters and see what we can find out. If you watched my last video, some of what I'll say will sound familiar. Deji fights out of the southpaw stance, primarily preferring to use a low guard, dropping the lead hand to the waist and keeping the rear hand floating around chest level. On offense, Deji fights behind an active lead hand. In the open stance, there's often a lead hand battle to establish the jab before the opponent. Being that Deji is a southpaw, most of his fights will take on this aesthetic, with Deji and the opponent probing at each other's glove to try and win the joust for lead hand positioning. If your lead hand is over top of the opponent's, you've won the position. He takes advantage of this by using the probe as a feint, drawing out his opponent's probe and countering over or around it, or conditioning his opponent to probe but throwing an actual punch instead. Guard manipulations are high-level tactics used by fighters to increase the likelihood of landing punches. This is done by intentionally forcing the opponent's guard out of the way to clear a lane for the shot. The highest level pros, from Floyd himself to Lomachenko, are often adept at using sneaky guard manipulations. Here, Deji throws a right hook that to the layman looks to be a shot that simply missed, but look closer. The real intent of the punch was to pull Fousey's left hand out of the way to clear a lane for the straight. Deji uses this guard manipulation constantly throughout the fight to much success. Very crafty. Deji showcases decent head movement, mostly utilizing slips, pulls, and ducks. He has easily the most developed head movement in the scene. Defensively, Deji seeks to maintain control of distance, using simple step backs and reverse shuffles to keep just outside of his opponent's punching range. Unfortunately, when fighting one of the greatest fighters of all time, you need to be nearly flawless, and Deji falls short of the mark wide. The low guard is generally used by fighters who are good commanders of distance or athletic enough to avoid most shots. Deji is good enough to where he can make Alex Wasabi or FouseyTube miss consistently. However, against even an old Floyd, the difference in speed and athleticism and understanding of range will be obvious, making the low guard a liability. Deji often hops into his lead hook. Bringing both feet off the ground while coming forward is a big risk. The opponent can pick up on the tendency and time to hop. More than likely, any punch, no matter how hard it is likely to drop you. He also has a bad habit of letting his rear leg come off the ground when throwing the backhand, often falling square to the opponent, but sometimes even landing off balance, tumbling backwards to keep from falling over completely. Moving up, Deji has a horrible habit of more often than not dropping the opposite hand when throwing a punch, combined with leaving his chin alarmingly high in the air. This is a recipe for disaster. Any halfway decent counterpuncher would feast. Being a safety-first fighter, using the low guard with distance and athleticism being your main avenues of defense means that more often than not you'll be overreactive. Deji's no exception. He tends to bite very hard on feints and can be drawn to parry low or do highly exaggerated pulls in response to them. He tends to over-rely on the pull. It's already a bad thing to be predictable on defense, but the pull is especially bad in that you can still be hit if you misjudge the punch or if the opponent follows up with more shots before your head comes back. Deji has a notoriously terrible gas tank. Even in the fight against Fousey, in the second round he was visibly winded. We'll keep it quick on Mayweather. Luckily for us, Floyd's last exhibition was against a southpaw. Historically, in open stance matchups, Floyd abandons his famous shoulder roll defense in favor of an active high guard. Active high guard in most cases still has a lot of the same defensive holds as a regular high guard. However, Floyd rarely maintains it long enough for this to be an issue. Floyd still maintains an excellent control of distance and reflexes. However, whether it's due to those reflexes dealing with age, not taking his opponent seriously, or a combination of both, Floyd at times is getting hit with shots that he'd usually be able to avoid. Floyd conditions his opponent with the probe throughout the fight, before launching straight rights to the body where level change low into an overhand or straight right to the head. It will be intriguing to see how Deji matches up with TBE. I think as long as Deji doesn't get too aggressive, Floyd will carry him to the final bell. If Deji does overplay his hand, however, it'll be over fast. The real winner in this fight will be Deji regardless. This will be an opportunity to learn that many who train their whole lives will never get, and will allow Deji to reach new heights in this sport. Like and subscribe for more content.